Joining me this week is an author, a radio host, a television personality, the founder of theblaze.com, and a man who everyone seems to have a strong opinion about. Glenn Beck, welcome to the Rubin Report.
How are you?
I'm doing well. We just chatted for 2 or 3 minutes before we started. You are one of these guys that you just say the name Glenn Beck. You just say your name. People go completely bananas. On both
One way
sides.
or another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
I don't deserve either of them.
Yeah.
I don't deserve the vitriolic hate, and I don't deserve the adoration. It's weird because A, I don't feel like I deserve either of them, but I'm willing to take the bad. I'm willing to sit and listen to the people who have the bad to say about me, because some of it I understand their perspective. Some of it I made huge mistakes, just wrong on. But I'm willing to take my share of what we're now living, and in hopes that other people will go, okay, wait a minute, what have I done to, even just a Facebook post?
Yeah.
What am I doing to contribute to the incivility that we have? I had a bigger platform, but we all have one.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned a Facebook post, because now we live in a time where if someone absolutely hates you or absolutely loves you, and as you said, you may not deserve either one of those, they can get to you immediately. Is that great, or is it maddening? Or it's both, probably.
No,
like most things.
if it's reasoned, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done radio. This is, in March, will be my 40th year in broadcast.
Wow.
I've done it for 40 years. When I did it, to get into radio, you had to have a test and get a license. I mean, it was hard to get a job. And there's only a small pool of people that could do it. Now, everybody has the same voice. If you have something that is appealing, there's no gates you have to go through. You can now write the president. You can tweet. He might read it and retweet it.
Right,
okay?
right.
So everybody has the opportunity to have their voice heard. That is miraculous. And a chance for me to write to the president or to Elon Musk or anybody and have them respond to me is truly remarkable.
Yeah.
What we're missing is, but because you have that power, it also requires responsibility. And because I did radio for 40 years, and my radio worldview was really shaped during the beginnings of Howard Stern. Mm-hmm. And I mean the early Washington, before anybody knew him, Howard Stern. I was raised in that era of stunting and, entertainment. Mm-hmm. And what I did was I mixed the two. Trouble. And I didn't see a problem. It was a natural evolution. That has taught a whole generation of that's the way you do it.
Yeah.
Not good.
I remember watching you when you were on Fox News, and you have the board and you're drawing arrows everywhere talking about the government's this and God's here and people are replacing government and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I remember being half entertained, half I was like, wow, this guy is nuts. I can't believe this is on television. And then half going, there's actual information here. So when you started doing that stuff, was that really the goal? Like, I'm going to do a little bit of everything. And,
I learned,
and then we'll figure out what the sauce is.
So my job, as I saw it, was to get ratings. That's my job, to get ratings.
People forget that. Like, that shouldn't be overlooked, right? That at the end of the day, you have to get ratings, you have to get clicks, whatever.
How many people now keep checking their Facebook page to see how many likes they get?
Right.
I mean, moms at home, how many likes do I get?
Right.
It's the same thing. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself caught up in those likes.
Yeah.
Early in my life, out being an alcoholic, before I sobered up, I'd do anything for a rating point. That drove me. Rating point, success, money, fame.
Yeah.
I crashed. Thank God for that crash, or I would have probably still be at Fox, and I'd be a monster. But the crash taught me that can help you on goals. Don't let it control you. So yes, my job was to get ratings.
Right.
But that was just a vehicle for me to be able to have my point of view and perspective. And my perspective was the early 20th century progressive is extraordinarily dangerous. You may not be that person today, but the roots are this, and some are still those people.
Yeah.
Okay?
And that's what you were drawing, really, a
Right.
lot, often talking
Right.
about the role of government. A lot of the things that I
Right.
discuss on this show, you were saying it starts here.
Correct.
And this is where it's going to end.
Correct. And so I did like 3 shows on Woodrow Wilson, and they were number 1.
Yeah.
Beating primetime. I did Hayek, I think a week on Hayek, which put Road to Serfdom back on the top 10 New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
And it was a rating success. So my job was, how do I make it interesting, make it fun, make it entertaining, and really teach something that no one else says can be taught on TV?
Yeah. How many of the people, as someone that's been in cable news, now you're on the frontier of the digital stuff, how many people that we actually watch in cable news do you really think know what they're talking about? This is something that I'm finding more and more often. There are so few people when I turn on the television, any of the cable news channels especially, that I think this person really is sort of intellectually honest or really understands what the role of government is or any of that stuff. Or are they just television people and we should just view them that way?
Most of them are television people. You remember the lady Paula Zahn?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. This is early on in my career, and who was it? Anna Nicole Smith. Remember she committed suicide?
Yeah.
So I was the first on every producer's Rolodex to call when there was a suicide, because I have suicide in my family and alcoholism. Call Glenn Beck, he knows.
Yeah.
And
Strange thing to have on your resume.
I know,
calls,
I know.
But I guess, you know.
But it used to happen every time a star would off themselves or have a drug problem.
Right.
Robert Downey, quick, call Glenn. And so she didn't really know who I was. She just knew that I knew about alcoholism and I was an alcoholic. And her question was so insipid. It was, what could we have done to prevent this? Like, as an alcoholic, nothing.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own bottom. Nothing. I'll never forget, I started talking about my mother. She asked some question and it got to my mother's suicide, and I had not talked about it on national airwaves. And when we were talking and I was trying to really explain to her that what alcoholism really is to me, that it's not something that somebody can talk you out of. She had no interest. It was like a fog. The minute I started talking about my suicide, or my mother's suicide, I saw her eyes all of a sudden, like the gears went, he might cry.
Yeah.
Ratings. Oh, she was locked in interested, but only to try to make me cry to get a ratings point. It was so crazy and awful. And I remember walking off feeling dirty. And I have met very few, I could count them on one hand, very few truly intellectually curious and honest. I think the only one that I can say is intellectually curious and really tries to be intellectually honest is Anderson Cooper. Guy I don't agree with, but I get along with really well.
Yeah.
He really tries to get it right. I don't think he does, but he tries, and it bothers him when he doesn't.
We don't have to do the Rolodex of all the people, but I'm curious what you think about Don Lemon. He's a friend of mine. He's been on the show.
I like Don.
I saw you guys together. You did, I think, back-to-back nights. What was about a year ago, right? And you guys really, whatever. Trust me, you did something with him about a year ago.
Okay.
But I thought it was really great because it wasn't gotcha news. It was a little more of what I try to do here, which is a decent talk from people that may or may not have different perspectives. So you think basically he's sort of in that group?
I think I
don't worry.
I don't know him. I know Anderson personally.
Yeah.
And so I don't know Don personally.
Yeah.
I know him on the air. And I know when he's on with me, it's always intellectually curious and intellectually honest, which I really find really rare.
Yeah.
Really rare.
Is intellectual honesty, it's really rare, but I mean, is it like, it's so not rewarded anymore? Like, I mean, this is what we were talking about right before we started, that people forget, these politicians, these news people, they forget we have YouTube. We can now watch you say the exact
does anybody
reverse
care?
thing. And that's the question. Does anyone even care? Or is everyone just pick their side and that's it? So you just go wherever
I don't know. I
the
mean,
wind
the
takes it.
root word of civilization is civil. And to be civil, you have to have intellectual honesty. You have to be able to say, I'm sorry. You have to be able to say, I was wrong. You also have to sit there and listen when somebody else is being wrong and give them the opportunity to say, yeah, sorry, that was wrong. I don't know. We're in a phase right now, and I think it's just a phase. If it doesn't destroy us,
Yeah.
it might, we might be at the circus and cakes part of the empire.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't destroy us, it will return. Well, one way or another. Even if it destroys us,
Yeah.
it will return. And that's why I think right now, it's important for people to stand up, to do what you're doing. That's not popular. It's not popular. You're pissing off the people that used to know you.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
No, they're pissed at me.
Yeah, right. But
A certain amount of them. That's
have
all right.
you changed?
No.
Or have you held on to the same principles and the world has moved?
You know, it's so funny. I keep saying that my liberal principles are now becoming a conservative position. And I think I've had a little bit of an evolution. I'm probably a little more small government than I used to be. But the basic liberal tenets that I've had are the exact same things that I had probably literally 20 years ago.
When you say
Probably.
liberal, do you mean classic
I
liberal?
mean classical liberal, not
Yeah.
progressive. And
Yeah.
I go out of my way every week to try to explain the difference of that.
Huge
And
difference.
unfortunately, the word liberal has just been mangled to the point where people don't understand what that is
By
anymore.
the progressives for a reason.
Yeah.
To take the individual freedom chair away from the table. If you look at the early progressive movement with Wilson and, oh God, here I go.
Yeah, go. No,
With
this is
Wilson and Theodore Roosevelt, they both believed in the big state.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the person who says, no, I don't want state? Both parties said, no, it's state. It's either, and this is before these took on dirty names, it's either fascism or communism. Which one is it? Fascism or communism? That was the argument. And the people that said, no, 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 constitutionalism, individual freedom, my own choice, my own way of doing it. No.
Yeah.
So FDR co-opted the word liberal, named the right conservative, and that took the conservative that said, I believe in the Constitution, I'm conserving man's freedom, I'm
Yeah.
a classic liberal. It made that go away,
Yeah.
took that choice away. So now we have to do what the opposite of what the progressives did and retrain people to say, no, they hijacked those words to take what we all, it's so amazing. These words never, they always just sounded nice, but they have never rung as real to me as they do now. There are some things that we find self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they have certain rights.
Yeah.
And their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That doesn't belong to the government.
Yeah. It also doesn't belong to any other nation, which is interesting. Nobody has that. The pursuit of happiness written in their constitution. I mean, we have that. We haven't always lived up to it in terms of equality and the rest of that, but it's a pretty good system.
The pursuit of happiness is one that I think Thomas Jefferson would have argued harder against had he known how it would be twisted. Because he originally wrote it, life, liberty, and property. But because they were anti-slavery,
Right.
they knew if you put property there, then it's going to be taken for the slaves. They'll say, the South, the slaves, these are property. It's guaranteed right here. It's in the Declaration of Independence, our founding document. So they changed it to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Imagine if that word would have been just left alone and been property. We're a million miles away from that.
Yeah.
No man has the right to take anything from me.
I love that you mentioned Thomas Jefferson because I think he's the best example of someone that lived in a time where what they believed in didn't quite match up to their life. So this is a guy, I was at Monticello about a year ago, I've told the story a couple times, where they give you the tour and I was incredibly impressed what they do. They admit he had slaves.
Oh, yeah.
They admit that he slept with at least one slave.
That's dicey.
They pretty much admitted it.
Yeah, but I know, but you should ask them for the evidence, because the evidence.
I mean, I think they mentioned her name and said
yeah,
that
Sally
he had-
Hemings.
and had a
yeah,
child
but that
and-
was proven for about 3 weeks, and it was done by Joseph Ellis. He misstated that they have his evidence that it could be one of 36 Jeffersons. They need his actual DNA, and it was known at the time that his brother, I think, was sleeping with slaves. So the paper evidence of the time shows that it was most likely his brother. Joseph Ellison, back in the 90s, was the one who wrote the book American Sphinx, and he said it was Thomas.
Right.
That was disproven 3 weeks later. The genealogists came out and said, no, we didn't say that. We said it could be one of 36 Jeffersons. So there's still
That's
an
it.
argument.
You should talk to the people over at Monticello, because I think they're giving a
Yeah.
less nuance. But my point being that it shows how we all live in sort of conflicted lives. That
Yeah.
while he owned slaves, he was writing the laws to free slaves.
Yeah.
And yet he didn't free his slaves immediately.
But again, here's something we also leave out of the history books. Thomas Jefferson went to Williamsburg several times to propose the legislation that you could release your slaves. If you were in debt, which he was, I'm sure they told you about his wine collection.
Yeah, oh yeah.
If you were in debt, you could not free your slaves, okay? I think even upon death, you couldn't do it. They finally changed the death part, but that's why Washington and Jefferson were anti-slavery, having slaves. Jefferson couldn't release them because of debt. Washington did it because the law only allowed him to do it on death.
Yeah. I don't even mention it to judge him in that way as much
No,
to show that we all live with strange forces
We're all going to be remembered at this time. There's going to be something.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but there's going to be something that they're going to go, what hypocrites?
Yeah.
No, we're doing the best we can.
You know, it's funny, Seinfeld is still my favorite sitcom of all time, and every night that I'm watching it, 7 o'clock right before I have dinner, I'm watching it and I think, man, in 10 years, the pitchforks are going to come after this show, because every episode dealt with some strange racial thing or religious thing or economic thing or something. And it's like, that's my issue with the progressives now. If you don't change the second they do, well, now you're a homophobe, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're an Islamophobe, blah, blah, blah. Let's put all that aside for a moment and start, which was with the first question that I wanted to ask you.
Can I take on my
Yeah,
own side on
please,
just that?
Please.
That happens on the right too.
Yeah, give me this.
Yeah, it happens on the right too. If you're not the right religion, or you're not falling in the right box on X, Y, and Z, Rand Paul, a libertarian, pro-gay marriage. I can't say I was pro-gay marriage. I'm pro do what you want to do.
You're pro-liberty.
I'm pro-liberty.
Yeah.
I am a religious guy who believes marriage is something between a man and a woman for the procreation of children. That's what I believe. You don't believe that? Okay. I mean, what's the problem?
Right.
So saying that to people on the right, there's a lot who are like, well, then you're not a conservative.
Yeah.
Then you're not a Christian, or you're not this, or you're not that. We both do it.
Yeah.
We got to stop it. We got to stop it.